You're watching Pulse for the 10th or 11th of January, and it's finally time for some World of Warcraft news. In this week's episode, we take a look at Blizzard's New Year price cuts on World of Warcraft, some patch 4.3 hotfixes, PTR Patch 4.3.2 and the new 64-bit client coming with it, cross-realm raids, the day after the Cataclysm ended, and more. Let's get started. First up, a quick mention. With the new year, Blizzard have put new prices on both Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm. Starting from the 6th of January and going on till forever, you can get both those games for those discounted prices on the Blizzard Online store and in retail stores. So that is a pretty good deal. Wrath of the Lich King will set you back a mere $19.99 and Cataclysm $29.99. So if you're thinking of picking World of Warcraft up and starting a new character before Mists of Pandaria hit, there's never been a better time. You can check the full details out below. Now we're going to move straight into the latest patch 4.3 hotfixes. These were for the 9th of January. So it has been a while since the last set of hotfixes, and today's is still a pretty short list. I'm quite sure the World of Warcraft team is hard at work once again, and we'll probably see a couple more coming soon. In today's list, we see some much needed Darkmoon Fair fixes, as well as some adjustments to instances and raids. Darkmoon items, the Captured Journal, and enemies insignia should now be able to be completed, even if they've been turned in previous months. Darkmoon Tonks and Zeppelins will no longer become a Horde balloon after faction switching from Alliance to Horde. Killing bosses in a guild group while using the Dungeon Finder should now award guild reputation and experience. Then there were a couple of Hour of Twilight, Well of Eternity and Dragon Soul fixes, changes and additions. You can see that full list below, but as I said, it is a pretty short one. With the hotfixes out of the way, we're going to talk about patch 4.3.2. Now this is going to be a relatively minor patch with one or two slightly bigger changes. We'll talk about those in just a second. Firstly, this patch is up on the PTR, so you can hop on there to check it out for yourself. The biggest change, and I would say the main reason that a lot of people are actually jumping onto the PTR, is the fact that Blizzard are testing the new World of Warcraft 64-bit game client. One good piece of news that we heard is that you don't actually have to download an entire new copy of the game. All you need to do is get the 64-bit exe file and replace your 32-bit one with that. If you're actually currently running a 32-bit version of Windows, don't even bother with this because you won't be able to use it. And if you're running a 64-bit system with, say, 4 gigs of RAM or less, then you might also want to give this a skip. You could even see decreased performance with this due to the increased memory usage of 64-bit programs. So all that said, this is for the slightly beefier systems out there, and those that can use it effectively will probably see increases in both performance and stability. It sounds good to me, and I can't wait to test it out. You can, as usual, read more about this below. We haven't heard when this patch is actually going live, but I'm gonna guess pretty soon, as there isn't really very much that they need to test there. Now, the other big thing coming with this patch is the fact that we're gonna be able to do cross-realm raids. Previously, Blizzard introduced the ability to form cross-realm parties with real ID friends, and now, with patch 4.3.2, they're adding the ability for players to use that same functionality to form raids, to run older, normal or heroic raids, or participate in battlegrounds. Now they do mention that at first we won't be able to run normal or heroic Dragon Soul with this, but that's not a big deal. We can do all the others and the battlegrounds. And as you all know, the battle tag system is in fact coming soon, so that'll be sort of replacing the real ID part here, which is pretty cool. It just means that you're going to have a lot more options and you'll be able to do this with a lot more people. Sounds good, and you can read more about it below. In one more quick mention, it seems like the Blizzard guys have deemed it about time to clean up our World of Warcraft installation directory a little bit with some file optimization. So this could just improve your game performance a bit and reduce the size of your install on your hard drive. It's not really a big deal, but I think it's pretty good that they do this every couple of months. Basically, the first time you launch your game in patch 4.3.2, it'll just optimize your files, which could take a couple of minutes depending on the speed of your system, and after that, voila! Increases in performance. Who's gonna say no to that? So now let's have a look at those patch notes. First up, in the general class changes, it seems like Vengeance is no longer triggered by receiving damage from other players. The tier 13 Balanced Druid 4-piece bonus now also increases the damage of Star Surge by 10%, in addition to its current effects. Hunter's got a pretty solid buff in the form of Aspect of the Hawk, now granting roughly 35% more attack power. Deterrence now also reduces the damage taken by 30% while active. Black Arrow now ticks every 2 seconds for 20 seconds, as opposed to every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. The total damage dealt by the ability is unchanged. Lock and Load no longer benefits Arcane Shot, nor is it consumed by Arcane Shot. Then for mages, yes, poor mages, Fireball damage has been reduced by roughly 6%, and Pyroblast damage has also been reduced by roughly 6%. For Paladins, Holy Radiance now costs 40% of base mana, up from 35. Priest's Mass Dispel should now once again prefer dispelling targets that have magic effects that can be dispelled. Then lastly, in the dungeon and raid changes, players can no longer win multiple copies of the same item on a single raid finder boss kill. So as I mentioned, you can either read all about patch 4.3.2 below or hop onto the PTR to give it a test yourself. Now in one quick mention before moving on to the next piece of news, World of WarCraft is no longer going to be compatible with Windows 2000 come Mists of Pandaria. Yes, so if you are actually running Windows 2000 right now and playing World of WarCraft on your PC, it's about time to upgrade. Next up, we have The Day After the Cataclysm Ended by Mindflame. So as you know, the end of the Cataclysm left Alexstrasza and the rest of the dragon aspects in a pretty peculiar situation. They had to learn to live as mere mortals. And this video is an interpretation of the events that followed the day after the Cataclysm ended. This is incredibly well done, the visuals are top class as you'd expect, and the voice acting is pretty stellar too. The video does mostly focus on Alexstrasza and how she deals with being immortal. And that's a good thing, as she is pretty easy on the eyes, and the voice was quite easy on the ears too. Anyway, have a look at that right here on YouTube and enjoy. So now let's head on into the World of Warcraft Smalls, and while doing so, let's transition with this Deathwing cake. Yes, it is in fact a cake. Now onto the Smalls. First up, over at the official site, you can read that the Scroll of Resurrection is temporarily on cooldown. You can have a look at some art gallery updates. You can read that Doomhammer is now available at Epic Weapons. Over at Wowhead, there are some guides to have a look at, one to collecting trading card game vanity items, and one to farming Darkmoon artifacts. Then have a look at some raid statistics over at MMO Champion for both Dragonsoul and Firelands. Read the top 10 lore developments of 2011 over at WoW Insider. Right here on YouTube, you can watch the latest WoW Insider weekly news update. That's for January the 6th. Then you can watch some PvP training with Hobbs and cartoons. Have a look at the latest PST episode, that's number 61. And lastly, you can watch the latest Legendary episode. This one focuses on more story in WoW, and that's over at TankSpot. There were a couple of blue posts to have a look at this week, and you can, as usual, find them all linked below. The Blues had a bit to say on looking for raid difficulty being too low, on account-wide ignore, on looking for raid loot rules, on Guntherluck, the voice of the deep's balance issues, on Mists of Pandaria PvP, and lastly, on watered down lore in Mists of Pandaria. So sadly, that's all I have for you in the news this week. If you did in fact miss the latest journal entry from the Journal of Lumen the Hunter, I'll link it for you on your screens right now. But as always, check back here soon for more news. Like the video, favorite it, share it with your friends, and subscribe. Most importantly though, happy finally having access to the 64-bit client.